I just adore this time of year. It's my absolute favourite time to be in the garden, or today inside one of the polytunnels. It's wall-to-wall blue skies, and after what feels like the longest winter I can possibly imagine, nothing makes me happier than sowing seeds. Seed sowing was what first got me into gardening when I was 8 years old. I remember saying to my mum, I'd love to give that a go, that looks really fun. And Julie went out and got some seeds and some yogurts, which we ate and used the yogurt pots, and some compost. And I still remember to this day, and it was only something as simple as a cornflower, but I was hooked. It felt like real life magic. The slight difference is today I own a nursery, I have a garden, and I have ever so slightly more money than I did when I was 8, so I have no self-control, and I've spent the winter buying probably in the hundreds region of seeds. And this is a mixture of annuals. Annuals are plants that you germinate, they grow, they flower and they die all in the same year. I've got perennials here like verbenas and salvias and erigeron. I'll come back year after year. And veg, and I typically tend to grow veg that I can't buy in the supermarket. So you'll have your normal favourites from the supermarket, but there's something quite fun about growing tomatoes that you can't buy, or different fruits and veg. The beauty of seed sowing is you can grow just about anything from seed, and you get such a diverse range of plants, so you can grow whatever it is that you want to. Every packet of seeds has a very specific set of instructions on how to sow them, how deep to plant them, when to sow them, where to plant them, all that sort of stuff. I want to show you a really simple way that I find it's really easy to sow just about anything. I use something called a half seed tray. This is a half seed tray. It's black plastic, but you can use it year upon year. You can get them in a full size. This is half a seed tray. A full size is typically about the same size as an A4 piece of paper, so these are about an A5 piece of paper. I find there's no amount of seed you could possibly grow for your garden that would justify a full seed tray. One of the things you want to try and avoid is sowing them too early when it's still cold and frosty. We'll probably still get a few frosts. I'm in the south of England, and I was in Cumbria this week and just gone, and they're holding off on a few things, but in the next few weeks it can be seed sowing galore. I've got peat-free compost. I've just got this from the local garden centre. I love getting my hands dirty, so I'm filling this seed tray up with my lovely peat-free compost, breaking it up as I go. And one thing that's really important is that you're not tight with filling your tray with compost. I'll level it out by hand. And then what I've also got is this little tamper. It's just a piece of plywood that we've cut down to size. It's the same size as one of these trays, and I'm just use it to compress down, because that gets rid of any air. It creates a lovely level surface for me to sow my seeds onto. If you don't have a piece of ply and a bit of wood, you can just use the bottom of some other pots and compress it down. And what you get is this lovely, flat, beautiful seed sowing surface. And it's about, once you fill it up and level it out and then push it down, you'll end up with about a finger's depth, and that's perfect for pretty much every seed. So, I'm just going to tear open the packet of seeds. I always sow everything because I spent years saving half packets of seeds and going, I'm going to remember, and I never do. So I always tip the whole packet out into my hand. Sometimes they'll have a little tiny packet like this inside the bigger packet, and that normally means it's either a really expensive seed, or the seeds are quite small, or you're not getting very many, and it's just an extra layer of protection. But for something like this, where they're weighed out by the gram, so you get, well, there's hundreds of seeds here. This is just a little lettuce. This is oak leaf lettuce. And this year in the garden, one thing that I'm particularly excited about is mixing ornamental flowers, annuals, perennials, and getting some veg in there as well. Okay, so probably sowing these slightly too thick, but ultimately it doesn't matter. When you're sowing into pots, you're gonna need to prick them out, and we'll come on to that. And even coverage seeds, and then with my trusty little tamper, I'm gonna push it down to make sure the seeds have all got really good contact with the compost. So that's what that should look like. And then I'm using something called vermiculite, and vermiculite is a mineral, and it's really squishy, and what it does is it holds the water, but more so it also provides these little seeds, and soon to be seedlings, a duvet, a layer of protection to make sure they don't blow away or dry out or are too exposed to the elements. So it does expand slightly when it's wet. What I'm doing is I filled it up quite liberally, and then again with the trusty tamper, I'll scrape off the excess, like so, create the mess, and just make sure it's tamped down. The key thing when sowing any seeds, no matter what the plant is, how big the seed is, how rare the seed is trying to make sure you're as uniform and even as possible. I'm aware I've made a mess, but in a moment I'll brush all that off. And one of the most important jobs is to make sure you label whatever it is you've just sown with as much information as you possibly can do using a permanent marker. It sounds ridiculously silly to say, but the amount of seeds I've sown where I've lost the label or it's rubbed out, and no matter how much you try, you can't remember what it is, especially as it starts to germinate. And stick the label in the top left-hand corner. There is no reason for that, but when you're doing quite a few, it just looks a little bit tidier. Over here, I then have a tray which I filled with water. It could be any type of vessel. I sometimes use an old grow bag tray, this little potting bench tray. You could use a bucket, but just something that can hold a thin layer of water, and there's a couple of inches of water in there. I'm just going to place this carefully into that water, like so. And then what that does is it allows the water to soak up through the tray and make sure that the seeds get the water, that the compost becomes damp without having to put a hose pipe or a watering can over the top and disrupting the seeds. Once that's done, I then put them over onto my tray here, and underneath this is something called capillary matting. It's just a bit of essentially underlay or carpet that helps to soak up the water, so it keeps them slightly wetter and moister for longer, so I don't have to water them as much. And once they're here, I'm just going to leave them alone and let them germinate. And actually what's really exciting, let me grab this one. Carefully, Jamie. I sowed these last week, and already at this time of year, because the light levels are longer, it's slightly warmer, they're starting to germinate. And you can see them just start to perk up through the vermiculite. Now these are slightly too small to prick out just yet, but you can see them start to develop their first true pair of leaves. No two seedlings look the same, and every tray you sort of take it as it comes. This is a cornflower, so actually one of the first seeds I ever sowed, and in there will be a good 40 or so beautiful seedlings. If you haven't ordered any seeds, or you've not been out and bought any seeds, it's the perfect time to do so, whether it's going to be some veg or tomatoes, and there's nothing better in life than freshly picked tomatoes. Whether it's annuals to sprinkle into your border, some cosmos or cornflowers, or whether it's perennials, it's the cheapest, easiest and quickest way to sow seeds. So if you have any questions about anything in particular, I am told you can leave a comment below and I will answer any questions that come in. I know nothing about YouTube, but I've been asked to ask you if you would kindly subscribe, and then you can keep up to date with all my videos. Drop a comment, give it a like, whatever you want to do, and I'm going to carry on sowing some seeds.